Guys, we're ready to start.
Thank you very much. Cool. So, my name is Jakub, and today we are going to talk about unlocking your creativity. So let's start. Today's journey is going to take us through this amazing world of our imagination. We are going to start with some ideas how we can stimulate our minds. We will talk about the creative mindset, so how you can think in a way that really helps you to get your creative juices out there. Then we will focus on the creative process. So we will try to demystify it and move the fog somewhere else. Then we will go to creativity techniques, where we will build your factory of ideas, and then you will be able to write like crazy with so many ideas in your notebooks and then in your books or poems. Then we are going to move to overcoming creative block, which I know can be sometimes a quite big problem for all of us, I think. And there will be some rituals of creative writers. So in preparation, I did some research on the habits of creative writers and how they were able to make most of their imagination. And at the end, I will share with you some of the inspirations that I think you will find very useful. Okay, so in this journey, I want all of us to have some interaction. I want you to actively listen. You can ask me questions whenever you want to. It's going to be maybe a little bit crazy. I like to sometimes make some surprises and just be weird. That's me. I think you will like it. If not, you have to like it anyway. I will mainly focus on sharing my fascination. So I'm a person who is obsessed with creative thinking. Some of you already know that, some of you will just realize it. In my case, I am an artist who express themselves in visual art. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to teach you how to write, but I'm going to share with you how to think in a creative way. We will also have this interaction where I would love to hear some of your ideas. So there will be some questions during this session. Whenever something really interesting comes to your mind, please feel free to share it. And at the end, it is your responsibility to apply it. All that knowledge. You can completely ignore it, that's fine. Or if you feel inspired, if you find something useful, then you can apply it in your practice. Otherwise, you risk having no change at all. What will be useful to take with you during this session? Critical thinking. So I'm going to share with you a lot of ideas, a lot of creativity techniques, and some of my stories, but I don't want you to take everything for granted. I want you to think by yourself and see what you will find useful, or sometimes when your first thought is like, oh, this is not relevant to me. If you actually think about it, then you can think, how can you make it relevant for your practice? Your mouth will be useful to asking questions, your eyes will be useful to see me, but it's just recommended. You don't have to keep looking in my eyes. And your ears, those are the most important things right now, so you can listen to me. One is enough. So let's start. Let's start with the stimulation. Your mind can be like a sponge, where you are constantly absorbing so many interesting things around you. You can use your senses. So you're listening, the sight, the smell, the taste, the touch, all of that make you very sensitive to the world. So I want you to think about your creative practice as absorbing all of those ideas around you and then transforming them inside you, so that later you can transfer them into something very unique because of all of those things that are getting to you. The first question that I have is, how do you stimulate your mind? What are the unusual ways of using your senses? So maybe I know you, Verti. Can you give me some examples of you trying to stimulate your mind before you start writing?
I mean, maybe like I like listening to loud music, dancing around a little bit, you know, perhaps loosening up a bit, having fun, and then, you know, that gets me in a nice mindset to write something that's not too serious, don't stress out about it too much.
Okay. One more person, maybe you.
I like cold water swimming. It really relaxes me, puts me in the zone for writing.
Okay. Before writing?
Before writing.
Okay. Or maybe during?
Oh, do you know what? That would be quite impressive.
That would be interesting, yeah. Okay. Moving forward. Some of the things that I find really useful is traveling. It puts me in a new environment, new people, new culture. And you don't have to travel far away. Sometimes it can be just visiting a new neighborhood. Sometimes it can be like traveling by bike somewhere else. And whenever there is something new, those new stimulants, they also change you inside. In case of reading, I'm not sure how true it is, but I heard that some of the artists, they recommend that it's good to spend twice as much time on reading than on actually writing. Is it somehow true? Do you find it useful?
I think so. I mean, for writing poetry, I would say that I read definitely more than I write, because it's nice to kind of see how other people do it and who I find inspiring and what I enjoy about their poetry. So I know what people enjoy about mine.
Okay. And another thing is seeking adventures. I'm not sure if all of you are fans of it, but in my case, I love putting myself in extreme difficult situations, something unusual. This is when you build your character, and as a result, the stronger is your character, the stronger will be your writing. Another stimulating thing are other people. So the more diverse circle of your friends is, the better, because it means that you will have more diverse ideas, more weird things that are coming to your mind. So it's a good thing to, for example, make friends with people who are studying engineering, people who are, for example, scientists, or people who are not studying at all, people who have a cool job, people who are much older, much younger. The more diverse it is, the more you will expose your mind to diverse ways of thinking. And sometimes it means making friends with people who you actually don't like. That means that you will understand their way of thinking, and if in your story you want to build a bad character, someone who is really evil or is just in a big contrast with your main character, that can be useful because you understand the other point of view. Here, as an example of interacting with people who think in a different way, I see it in a way that you have a certain way of thinking in your mind. Other person can think in a very different way. But when you interact, when you talk, when you discuss ideas, when you argue, this is when the change is happening in both of you. The ideas that you share, even if other person disagree with them, those ideas make that person at least aware of them, and as a result think slightly differently, and the same thing is happening in your mind. So the more people you interact with, the more changes are happening in your mind, and the more it expands. Okay, a little bit on creative mindset. Sensitivity is the key thing about creative thinking. The more you fall in love with every single small thing around you, the more you let those things to move you, the more you actually later are able to express those unique reflections. So it can be those little beautiful moments, something like a little caterpillar turned into a butterfly. It can be something more dramatic. So for example, in case of challenges, I don't know, a death of your loved one, or maybe very, very difficult rainy day, all of those things, they just can be ignored if you have an approach to life where you are just keep going without paying attention what is going on around you. But if you really pay attention and if you experience all those moments, those people around you, those ideas, those emotions, this is when you have actually much more ideas and things to share because you notice them. I sometimes like comparing our imagination to this idea of garden, where whenever something comes to your mind, you can plant those ideas like seeds and you let them grow. How do you let them grow? You have to give them some sun. Sun can be your attention when you are actually paying attention to all those ideas. And the more you think about them, the more they grow. Sometimes you have to work on them a little bit. So you just put a little bit of water. Sometimes you see, oh, there's something bad going on. So you have to use your critical thinking in order to cut all those parasites that are trying to destroy your garden. And all of us can have very different gardens. They can grow in different ways, but I want you to be careful so that your garden doesn't look like this, okay? So take care of it. In case of inspiration, my approach and approach of many creative writers is to do this in a proactive way. Don't wait for inspiration to come to you. I mean, that's cool if you still have new inspirations coming to you. But if you rely only on waiting for them, then there might be times when you do nothing for days or weeks because you are keep waiting, and as a result, that builds frustration. The more frustrated you feel, the more you close yourself to actually absorb more of the ideas. So try to think, how can I find them proactively? Go for that walk, go for that exhibition, go to this talk, or maybe just interact with some strangers. The more you are trying to chase the ideas, or sometimes just force yourself and write anyway, this is when they will come. Sometimes you can wait so long that it might mean death to your practice. So remember, inspiration has no schedule. Inspiration doesn't care about your deadlines, and depending on inspiration, sometimes it can be a toxic relationship. So that's why try to be proactive and just don't make yourself dependent on the external world. Okay, now a little bit on trying to build a schedule or trying to build your values. So there are so many things going on in our lives, and sometimes it means that you can be very busy with your work. Of course, all of us, we have to sleep, but there might be other things that are coming to your world. And when you are through this journey of life, it's good to be aware what are the things that you are spending your time on. Because if you think about it, one day when you are still having the same days without any time for you being creative, or very, very little time for you to write, then you might realize that your biography is just made of time that is not what is meaningful to you or to other people. It's very important to make things that are meaningful to you, but sometimes it requires self-discipline. So here we have a slide which can show you how so many things can be distractions in your life, where the work, or for example this pleasure of gaming, can distract you from what is really important for you. and some of your dreams can just die as a result. Okay, now creative process. I remember when I had a conversation with my studio tutor, and I had like maybe 4 or 5 studio tutors in the last 4 years. Every time I liked to talk with my tutors about their way of perceiving creativity, and one of my tutors told me that it's like a train journey where you start with a certain station and there are a lot of people with you. The train is busy, there are like dozens or even hundreds of people, and you are going to the next station. 10 of them leave. Then you go to the next station. Maybe another 5 leave, another 10 come in, and you are keep moving to the next station, but you keep seeing people coming and leaving. If you think about it, our thinking process is sometimes the same, where we start with a certain inspiration and we are like keep moving to the next step, but then we just think, okay, that's enough, let's leave. But if you are really consistent and you are keep moving your idea forward and you are keep trying to go like really deep, and then at the end you actually do something unexpected, this is when brilliant, like genius ideas are born. So sometimes put that effort to go a few steps further than all the other people. Okay, another way how I like to think about creative process is this idea of jumping between critical and creative thinking. Those two don't really like each other, but those two are extremely useful to work together. Because if we think about your imagination as a monumental mind library, where all the memories, all the stories, all the books that you've read, and the films, the conversations, all of that can be a potential source of your next story, of your book. But there are millions of those experiences. How do you choose which ones are actually good? This is how your critical thinking is very useful. To think, okay, I'm going to choose this, this, and this. Let's try to do something with it. But if you are only playing with your critical thinking, then you don't actually allow yourself to have fun, to be like really playful. This is when it's really important to tell your critical thinking, hey, okay, give me 5 minutes, please just stay away. I need to just have fun for some time. And you completely turn off your critical thinking. You leave it somewhere else for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, maybe for the whole day, and you are keep playing. You are really creative. You are just experimenting in a way that can be really messy, and then you come back to your critical thinking. You look at your mess, and then you think, okay, that's actually useful. That idea, if I develop this character, that can be really interesting. That situation, if I put them there, that can bring really interesting results. But at the same time, I see so many things that I don't want to share with other people. So many things that are a mess. And then you jump again to your creative thinking, and then you make more mess, you experiment more, and then again, critical thinking. The more you jump, the better. Focus. Just start writing. More ideas and energy will come once you start. I sometimes see it in my own practice, where I overthink, like creating the next article, or overthink to make that painting or sculpture. But when I actually start, this is when really cool ideas come to my mind, because the more you interact with your characters, with those stories, the more your mind starts to think how they can exist in a different way, the more your mind creates those neuron connections, and as a result, you are like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting as well. Just because you've put the effort to start. Okay, so now I have a question to you. When do you feel the most creative? Now I want to ask this question to someone else. Do we have any volunteers? Or should I choose the volunteers? Any hands? Okay.
I'll say when I'm on the plane to anywhere. I remember when I first came to Newcastle, I'm obviously from the States. I remember when I first came to Newcastle, and it was just the idea that no one around me would be someone I would like conceivably see again at any point. And that I had like 7, 10, 12, whatever amount of hours I had before my next connection to do basically whatever I want to pass the time. I guess that idea combined with the fact that I couldn't have my phone, I really couldn't move, was when I would, do something and not even really care if my seat partner saw or anything to that extent because, mind your own damn business. But yeah, I would say when I'm traveling somewhere, like you said, but not even just when I get there. That's a special moment. But when I'm in that sort of metaphysical limbo, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen when I get there, but I'm on the way. And for now, nothing I do really matters.
So a few things that I found here very relevant is one thing. You had no access to the internet, so this is one distraction just put away. Your phone is right now completely useless. Another thing, like you said, there was like nothing matters. You're just in this plane, and you're from United States, yeah?
Yeah,
and
nothing I do is going to make the plane faster, so I can do whatever I want.
So you came here to study and left behind your previous life.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, when you are like changing the environments and there is nothing that you feel really connected with yet, that gives you a freedom of exploration. But sometimes it can mean just like the small things. You just close yourself in a room and you ask your parents, your friends not to disturb you for like an hour. You silence your phone or turn off the television. Okay, do we have any more really creative experiences when you really felt you were really energized? Anyone? I like your smile. Can you please tell me?
It's not as fancy. Usually it's just like 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't sleep, I really get in the mood. Especially if I watch like a film or something beforehand. Like I remember a few weeks ago I watched Mulholland Drive by David Lynch, and I was so like in awe of how creative it was and how like special it was. And like, I really just wanted to write something that I could kind of make that good. That's usually when I get those massive creative bursts in the middle of the night. That's really it.
Okay, I like it. I'm the same. After watching films, I'm like sometimes giving myself a few hours not to do anything else but just reflect, especially after good films. Okay. Break and relaxation is not only useful but also necessary. So if you keep fighting with that story and you keep trying to force it to develop and you're forcing yourself to really write those 10 pages or 100 in a certain deadline because you are in a hurry, or maybe you're just obsessed with writing, sometimes you will actually feel much more energized and your mind will be much more fresh if you allow yourself to take a break. It's not always a sign of procrastination. Sometimes it's a sign of being smart. So I sometimes realize it when I work on a computer. For example, when I was doing this presentation and I thought, okay, I need to eat something. I need to chill on the sofa for a moment. But actually like 10 cool ideas came to my mind just because I moved, just because I allowed myself to rest a little bit. And I always have my notebook with me, so I just wrote them down and then came back and had a few cool things to share with you. Okay. Sometimes it's good to experiment. So here is an example of calligram poems. which is a very different approach to writing poems. I'm sure that some of you are already familiar with them, and if you look at the internet, there are so many cool examples where personally I find it cool when people are painting with their poems and have like things that look like a real drawing. So try to sometimes ask yourself, how can I do this differently? How can I experiment in a way that was never done before? Sometimes you can just do this for the sake of experimentation, but on the other times it will allow you to bring completely new perspectives or new style that will make you unique. Okay, and now creativity techniques. We have a very good time. Okay, so let's play this video. I cannot stop it anyway, so.
What if you finish? What if it's good? What if somebody reads it? What if somebody loves it? What if somebody highlights it, saves it? What if somebody shares it? What if you get that agent? What if it becomes a movie? What if it just works out for you? What if it's bigger than you ever expected? What if it's life-changing? What if it's not? What if it's more than life-changing? What if you're proud? What if you feel blessed? What if it helps somebody? What if somebody is healed? What if somebody's touched? What if somebody escapes? What if somebody's happy? What if someone sees themselves? What if you become someone's favorite author?
Asking quality questions. That's really important. If you look at those questions on the left, that they can be very destructive for your ego, for your self-worth, and as a result, you are not actually working on yourself, you are just sabotaging your own creative practice. But on the other hand, you can ask those questions on the right. I mean, those are just examples. You can find your own questions, and we think with questions. So if you change the way you ask things, then it's changed the way you think. It's changed the way of what conclusions you are going to come with. Like, for example, the first one. Am I a good writer? What are the answers? Yes, I am good. I don't have to do anything else because I'm already good. Or no, I am bad. I cannot do anything about it. I'm just a bad writer. Yes, no. But instead you can ask yourself, how can I become a better writer? And then you think, okay, maybe I should put more effort to write more. Maybe I should put myself in a situation where I surround myself with more creative friends. Maybe I should start a new story. Ask quality questions and you will get quality results. Here's another creativity technique, which is wall note. I personally use it when I have to write essays or articles. So it's a very good technique for a long period of time. Wherever in your room, you can just put a big sheet of paper, and like if you have like a project that can be done in the next week, or for example in a few months, just have those ideas very visible. And then whenever something comes to your mind, just keep adding it to the list. They don't have to be perfect, they don't have to be amazing. It's just about keep generating this content that is visible whenever you are entering your room, whenever you are working on your computer, or you are just taking a break. The more you see it, but sometimes it's not just about seeing it. Sometimes it's just about being aware that it's there on the wall, and it makes you comfortable that it's so very easy to access. Then as a result, it will be so easy for you to keep adding new ideas. And then you realize that when it's actually time to write, you have hundreds of those ideas, and now you can turn on your critical thinking, choose the best ones, choose those that you think are really meaningful, and from there you can start expanding them, exploring. This is a starting point. Very important thing, this is a starting point. Because it's difficult to start with like blank canvas, nothing at all, but if you have 12, 30 different ideas, then it's much easier because you have those little fundamentals to work with. Okay. Another one. This one is for very quick thinking. When you need like a quick inspiration, which the name is One Breath, and it's literally one breath. So the idea of this creativity technique is that you have a piece of paper in front of you, something to write, and then you take a very, very deep breath and you hold it. I'm not going to do this right now because I need to talk with you, but, or maybe, yeah, you can do this. All of you, you can do this right now, and I will be talking, and let's see, I don't know, just do this for fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, start. So you think right now, you have many ideas, what to do, you just write down things and you use your subconscious. You are not like trying to judge them, you are not trying to think, oh, that's good, that's not. No, you're just writing everything down, and then you can breathe right now. After 10 seconds, after 20 seconds, whatever, you have 22, maybe 15, whatever, random things that just came out of your subconscious thinking, if you like really turned off any like judging, and that's something that can be like a starting point. It's messy, but you will realize that in creativity, sometimes that messy process, when you are allowing yourself to just follow your intuition, this is when you can find those unique ideas. So sometimes it's good to try when you really need to get some ideas really fast. And I was trying it sometimes on myself, or sometimes we were doing it with my friends. There might be situations where you think like, oh, it's already 30 seconds, I have nothing, then you take a breath and you have like, oh, blank sheet of paper. That's because you keep trying to be critical about it. So it's anything, literally anything what comes to your mind, just write it down. It's not about being perfect, it's not about having something meaningful from the very, very first moment. In case of this technique, it's about quantity, not quality. Okay. So this one is my favorite one, thinking big. And to give you a little bit of context, here is also one of my favorite quotes. Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you will land among the stars. What's the idea of this technique? So imagine that you are working on a project. That can be a book, that can be a story, or maybe you are organizing an event where you are going to present yourself as a writer. Start with very, very high bar, with really big dream. Ask yourself, what everything is possible? Literally. What if I can have at this event Charles Dickens and, for example, Stephen King? What if they can be there and give a workshop and support me? And you are like thinking in a way like money is not a problem, time is not a problem, any resource, you've got it. You just allow yourself to think really big in your imagination. You have that cool, exciting idea that is so far away, but it makes your heart beat much faster. Once you have that beautiful vision, this is when you clash it with reality. Or maybe instead of saying, like having this clash, you just take like a little steps down where you are trying to think, okay, how can I actually make it real? Unfortunately, Stephen King has quite a busy schedule, but what if I, for example, find the alternatives? So the second step, and it's very important to separate them. In the first step, you are completely free and you believe that you have all the resources, you're really thinking like everything is possible. The second step is like you realize what's the reality, what are the resources available to you. The third step is that you try to fill the gap between, like, what are the alternatives? How can I do this in a different way? What can I do in order to have very similar experience, very similar result? That is a really nice exercise to think creatively, and that is, I think, one of the best techniques in order to have really cool results. Okay. The beautiful moments. Those are like the moments when you feel really inspired, and I call them the moments of high inspiration. So some of us are lucky enough to experience a few of such beautiful moments per life, per year. Personally, I will share with you like some tips how I was able to do this, and I had such beautiful moments in my life, maybe like around 8 of them. So it's a creativity technique that is actually like difficult to control, because we don't always feel like everything is possible. I am a person who can become anyone, and I have that big dream, and I am 100% sure that it will become true. Sometimes the reality is keep pushing us down, but when you are actually sometimes able to move your head above the sky, above those clouds, this is a great moment to make most of it. This is the great moment to make decisions. Some people say, oh, it's the worst moment to make decisions because you are so happy, but usually you are not happy. But those are the moments when you are really true with yourself, when you really know what you want in your life. So if any of you experience those moments, I highly recommend to make decisions, to document them, and make sure that you already took some first steps. So you will feel like this is the beginning of my journey, and even if I go down through the valley, I will continue. How you can sometimes try to achieve those moments, to put yourself there, I think it really depends. Sometimes it can be, for example, like in your case, journey when you are in a plane, you are leaving your life behind, but it doesn't have to be like so extreme. Sometimes, like in my case, it works in a way where I completely isolate myself. For me, solitude is the key thing, where I'm not surrounded with my family, not surrounded with my friends. But it doesn't mean that you have to be like in a closed room. Sometimes, yeah, it can be like in a plane, it can be in a library. And like, for example, silence, but in my case, music, like the combination of those two, especially when you have like this playlist that really feel so amazing. I really recommend to create such playlist for yourself, and yeah, just don't let yourself to distract yourself. And intense experience, it can be a very positive intense experience, it can be a very negative experience. If you talk with some people who had life-changing moments which are very similar to those beautiful inspirational moments, those moments happened because of such extreme situation that maybe was really, really sad, maybe was really, really devastating, but as a result, it just disrupts you from the everyday life. But maybe it can be a very positive thing. For example, I don't know, you have a new baby in a family, or for example, you won a lottery. But what is more common? Maybe you just made a new friend. Maybe you fell in love. Maybe you just thought that I no longer want to be who I am and I want something new in my life. Actually, I think I should ask falling in love as one of the creativity techniques. But first, I will need to do some more research on it. Okay, overcoming creative block. Before we discuss it with some of the ideas that I've prepared for you, I would like to ask you, how many of you experienced creative block? So right now it's just voting, you don't have to share it, just raise your hand if you had a creative block. Okay, so I think it's a quite common thing for everyone. Purpose and reason. There is this nice proverb saying that the wolf that you are keep feeding is becoming stronger. So if there are things inside you that make you sad, that make you frustrated, that make you really angry, if you are keep paying attention to those things, then they just become stronger because you feed them with your attention, you feed them with your emotions, you just make those narrow connections much stronger and much easier to think that way, and as a result you are just growing that snowball. But instead you can make this conscious decision to pay attention to those things that you are actually really passionate about in a positive way, things that make you feel like life is amazing, things that can give you some opportunities in the future. So ask yourself questions like, why do you write? Don't ask yourself, oh, why it's so difficult to write, or why there are so many obstacles. Instead, ask yourself, what are the opportunities? Think about those facts that empower you, those facts that make you feel better about yourself, or those things that just make you happy. Gratitude, I think, is the best thing to overcome creative block, when you identify the things that you can be grateful for. Is your creativity blocked? If yes, then try to let it breathe. Put your fears away. So sometimes because of those frustrations, you might feel like your mind is like closed. You feel like in a cage, and as a result, all those stress, fears, doubts, limiting beliefs, and expectations, your expectations or expectations of other people, they can like really squeeze your creative juices, and the more you feed them, the more you allow them to be in your mind, it's just getting, maybe it's not getting worse and worse, because if you think that way, then you think, oh, I cannot do anything with that snowball, I cannot do anything, it's just getting much worse and worse. As a result, think that you are able to actually change it, because in your mind you have a full control over the way you think, over who you are, and the decision that you are making. So you can try to get rid of all of those things and replace them with this gratitude, with your dreams, things that bring you joy, connect more with your friends, and focus more on the ideas that you want to develop instead of focusing on those things that are stopping you. And here is another really nice quote. Man's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimension. So if you are keep expanding the way you think, then you actually make much more place for new blocks of your future. And simplicity. This is another really good starting point, where sometimes the way of thinking how something should be done can be the most devastating thing to actually do something. To be more concrete, let's think about writing a story. Let's say, before I sit, I have to have enough coffee next to me. I need complete silence. I need to already finish all my homework. I need to have at least one really nice weekend when I was enjoying myself. And I need to do this exactly at 5 p.m. Oh, unfortunately, it's already 6 p.m. And I need to, I don't know, do this in Hawaii, because I feel very creative in Hawaii. If you put on yourself so many expectations, so many, what's the good word? Not standards. Restrictions, yeah. That it has to be in a certain way, in a certain time, with certain people, in a certain environment, then all of those things just block you. But the truth is that all you need is just this piece of paper and something to write. It can change depending on what you're working on, but sometimes if you try to really simplify it as much as you can, even if you feel extremely hungry right now and you didn't eat anything for the last few hours, does it really matter right now if you feel like, hey, I want to do this? Sometimes I am in a situation, hey, I didn't eat anything for the last 15 minutes. I should start working, but there's this cookie. But when you feel inspired, I sometimes don't eat for half a day. 8 hours, keep working. Should I keep finding those excuses to eat something, to check something, to scroll my phone, where actually you can just realize that those things are just in your mind and you don't have to keep putting those restrictions on yourself. And another really useful thing is, I think, is surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, people who support you, that stimulate you, and sometimes just people who show you some appreciation. Sometimes you actually are not with such groups of friends. I mean, that's so cool that we're having here creative writing society. You have so many amazing minds around you, but sometimes it's not the case. And when you are so desperate to get some appreciation for your new poem, for your new story, realize that, hey, maybe the friend next to you also needs a little bit of appreciation for the value that they try to create. So if you find yourself in such difficult situation, sometimes it's good to shift your focus from yourself and put your focus on somewhere else and say, hey, if I am the person who cannot find someone who would appreciate my work, my passion, then maybe I can be the person who shows some appreciation and support for the fellow next to me. And the last one that I have for you is this strategy. When you are in those really difficult times, this storm is coming, you feel like your ship is going to sink and the waves are so big, it's such a busy time, there are so many deadlines coming, but you actually write anyway. If in those busy times, the times of uncertainty, the times of stress, you are actually keep writing, then when the storm will pass and you actually were writing during that storm, then after that you will be like, if I was able to do this at that time, I can write anytime. So sometimes see your problems as challenges that are challenging you to actually write anyway. And here's another question that I've got for you. What are your strategies of dealing with creative block? So I shared with you some of the things that I sometimes apply. I wonder if there are any other strategies. Anyone?
One of the ones I use, if it's very difficult, what I'll do is I'll just pick a random book from my shelf, pick a random page, read that and then see if that generates any ideas.
Okay. Next person, maybe you.
I read something that I really like again. Because I got an idea from that I know previously, so I'll just read it again, and that makes me think of something else, and then I read that, and then it goes to continue. So now get some ideas that I read before.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Maybe one. Oh yeah.
If I get a block or or burnout from a creative project, I usually don't do anything about it for a while, like don't touch that project.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I kind of feel like I want to continue it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's easier.
It gives you a fresh perspective. You allowed yourself to take a break, and then you come with fresh approach. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else would like to share their ways of dealing with creative block? Okay. So let's move forward. We still have some time. Rituals of creative writers. So here we have an example of Haruki Murakami, a writer where when I was doing my research, this is a guy who really loves running and swimming, and I totally agree with it. Like, I used to be a teenager who hates any kind of movement and sport, and I was just trying to create art anyway, but because of my habits of really working until late and without any bigger breaks, I'm sometimes just keep sitting like this for hours, and you just have your body closed, and it's like you're just mixing those toxic feelings and little frustrations inside you. But when you actually put yourself aside and you go for a run, or maybe you take those dance classes, or for example you go for a swim, then your body is getting those new stimulants. It's not just your mind. Some people have an approach where they think, hey, my body is just a vehicle, a transportation for my brain. All I need is just move my brain from one room to another in order to absorb a new book or have a new conversation. But actually, your brain, your mind, and your body, they are so connected. So if you take care of your body, and you are really stimulating it with movements such as run or exercising, gymnastic, whatever way of just building those muscles or stretching yourself, that brings those hormones that help you just think in a much better way. And during those times, you might have your best ideas. There is this film about this guy who was writing the screenplays for musicals. It was Tick, 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 Tack, something.
Tick,
Tick, tick, boom.
Yes, I think so. And during the film, he was just a few hours before showing his musical to the audience. What he was doing, he was swimming in order to come with that melody, with those words. So I really recommend to moving your body. Experimenting with different styles. So many creative writers, artists, composers start with imitating other creatives. When you are able to study their way of expressing their imagination, you are studying their way of building the world, and later you see, okay, how can I make it unique for myself? But if you are stuck with just one way of doing things, then how do you actually develop? I mean, do we have something to write? No. So I will be your diagram. If you're like keep growing like this, it's like a straight line. But if you're keep trying different things, you're actually growing like a tree to different directions, and then you actually see, hey, maybe that way wasn't the best. Maybe I want to go all the way that way. Just because you started something different, you actually have much diverse toolkit, much diverse possibilities of what your writing can become. And the question, how can it be done differently? Give me examples and ideas of weird writing. So, so this is like a little game, let's say. I want you to think right now about the approaches, like how you can really experiment in a really weird way. So let's say you are writing upside down. You are writing when you are running. Or maybe you tell yourself not to write for 5 days, no matter what, including not writing on a computer, not sending messages, you just talk. Or maybe you say, okay, I'm going to write, but only on the walls of my room. Give me a few crazy ideas so that I want you to like think in a different way.
I'm not sure if it's the same thing as you were thinking, but of like weird poetry, you're a student of French as well. I have these like French flashcards, and I try to make a poem out of them and see if I can join them together and make a meaning out of that as one weird piece of writing.
Interesting, yeah, that's a way of experimentation, yeah. Any other experiments? It can be something that just came to your mind, or it can be something that you know from the stories. Yeah?
If you're bilingual, try writing with both of the languages you know.
Okay, that can be interesting. Or for example, you can try writing with both of your hands. Yeah?
Write backwards, so like try and do the end first and work your way to the start.
Okay, I was trying it. I like it, yeah. Okay, yeah, you see. Sometimes just try to do something different, something else, that will bring more creative ideas to your practice. And here is another one. Always have something where you can collect your ideas. It can be your phone, it's useful, but it's not the same as having a real notebook. How many of you actually have a notebook or something with you where you collect your ideas? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. So quite many of you. Those of you who don't have it yet, I really recommend it. Whenever something comes to your mind, sometimes we just think, oh yeah, that's cool. I will come back to it later. And then finally in the evening, you completely forgot what was it. You had the feeling, oh, it was there, but you completely forgot about it. Or maybe even if you sometimes there were situations when you didn't realize that you forgot about something. I find my notebook so useful. There are so many ideas that maybe can become something great, or maybe you will just stay there. The worst thing you can do is just collect them and let them die inside your notebook. But from time to time, remember to open that notebook and to let your ideas to grow. And everyday practice. When I was reading about the biographies and daily strategies of those writers, what I realized is that I think all of them just keep writing with a very strict schedule. Okay, not all of them, but a lot of them had really strict schedule, where you can think about your creative practice as a hobby. If it's just a hobby and you want to do this from time to time, that's completely fine. But if you actually have those aspirations to make it really cool, really creative, that comes from effort. That comes from that practice of keep working. Sometimes it can be a mess. And it's also the case, of course, for visual artists and musicians. Daily practice of keep trying new things and keep doing the work allows you to make this practice of writing the part of who you are. And if it can be a little bit difficult to make such habit at the beginning, once you start, then over time it will just be who you are, what you do. And recently I had a cool conversation when I had a podcast with my friend, and when I was interviewing my friend, he actually made me realize another really important thing is to finish your projects. Finish that book, finish that story, finish that poem. It's cool to experiment, try new things, and like leave those things because you already tried. But from time to time, it's so important to actually finish what you've started. Because if you want to get that job, if you want to have that publisher or your agent, you have to show them something that you actually finished. If you just tell someone, oh, I have this cool idea and I have it somewhere in my notebook, people say, okay, show it to me. Oh, it's not done yet. Then why do you talk to me? Finish it, even if it means putting a lot of effort, even if it means that it's not going to be as good as you wish. Try to finish it anyway, and then in the future, if you really feel you need to do this, you can try to expand it in a different story. You can try to develop it with different opportunity, but try to finish as much of your projects as you can. And here, the creative bubble. Putting aside the distractions. When you create for yourself that environment where for the next 3 hours or 2 or maybe just 10 minutes, I want to be completely undisturbed. Put aside your phone, don't go to the city, don't listen to the music. You have that idea to go somewhere for the holidays, okay, think about it later. Oh, you really like that guy or that girl and you think about going for a date, okay, maybe later, now I need to focus. Maybe your cat is playing a guitar or whatever it is. Let your cats just keep doing their things, you need to focus. Sometimes it also means that you have another hobby that you think, hey, it really develops me as a person. For example, you are also a musician and you really like playing music and you feel like, oh, okay, maybe I will write later, now I want to practice a little bit. Sometimes, in order to develop your imagination, it means that you just let one of your hobbies to just wait for a second, because if you keep multitasking and you keep trying to do one thing without finishing the previous one, and you are just in this mess of doing everything at once, then how can you actually stay focused? If you allow yourself to be really focused and just be in the moment, this is when you really go really, really deep. So instead of multitasking, try multitasking in a long term, where you can have diverse hobbies, diverse interests, but not everything at once. And also, recreating the flow state. So here's another question to my beautiful audience. When and how did you write your best story? Before I ask you to give me some ideas, you can already start thinking about it, but just to give you some context, when I was doing a research for my dissertation on exceptional creative thinking, many of exceptionally creative people, those were the individuals who actually noticed when were the times when they really felt creative, when they had those best ideas. And from those points, what they were basically trying to do is every day recreate those moments. So for some of them, it meant sitting in front of the desk with a beautiful view of a church, and like they were just always writing there. I think it was Beethoven when he was having like a certain amount of coffee seeds that he was putting into his coffee. Sometimes those can be like little ridiculous things, but once you notice when you feel like really creative, even if it's sometimes just like placebo, I'm like those counting your coffee seeds, that might be a little bit weird, but even those weird things, or sometimes they might be normal, if you notice them and then you keep recreating them, then basically every day you tell your mind, hey, now we are going to be in a creative state, and your mind is like, okay. So, any examples of you noticing when you feel the most creative? Yes?
Mine is, it's a bit strange, but it's I whenever I light candles and I have candles burning, that's always when I feel the most creative. I work in a candle shop at home, and I wonder if it has something to do with that. But whenever I have, especially like big candles, I have like 4 wicks, when they're burning, that's when I feel most creative.
So in your room, like, do you bring them, yeah?
I have so many, I have like hundreds of candles.
That's an example of recreating it. Any other example? Yes?
I don't know when I was the most creative, but when I wrote my best story, I was under a lot of like stress and pressure because it was my A levels. I had to write one as coursework, and weirdly, it's my favourite and best one. But I was under quite a lot of stress when I was doing it, 'cause A levels, and I was just, it wasn't in a specific place. I just sat down in the sixth of my area and just kind of looked at it and was like, oh, that makes sense. And wrote it, scratched out, and rewrote it again, but it just kind of happened. But the most normal thing is I was stressed.
Okay, that can be an interesting way of using stress. Next time when you feel very stressed, you can be like, ooh, maybe it's a good time to write something.
Yeah, but I don't like stress, but it didn't really calm me down. It was just writing away.
But it's a way of like, sometimes the things that are limiting you, sometimes those obstacles which you think, oh, this is stopping me, try to think, how can I reverse it? How can I actually turn the limit into something that will be advantageous for me? So for example, some people just say, hey, I work really nice under pressure, and when they write a story and they have no deadline, they just give a deadline for themselves, like, oh, it has to be done next week, for example. And there was a person...
I have my best creative ideas when I'm on long journeys, like a train journey or a bus journey.
Okay, so sometimes if we want to recreate it, then it means that you literally just sit in a bus, you just pay £2 to take it to the South Shields or whatever, and then you just write, and then once you get to the South Shields, you pay another £2 just to come back to Newcastle. I sometimes do this with like trains. I like thinking in a train. Okay, and this is the end of our presentation. I have a few inspirations for you that I think you will find useful. So the first one is the Daily Rituals by Mason Curie. I'm not sure how to pronounce the surname, but basically this is the book which I was using for my research. There you can find a lot of creative habits of different types of creatives. So there were like many creative writers, but also musicians, visual artists, composers. So I really recommend that book. Another cool inspiration that I recently explored is StoryCorps. So basically this is an initiative where they make short interviews with people to capture their stories, and sometimes it's happening just before the death of such individuals, but like the stories that they are sharing, they are really, really moving. So I really recommend you to check it out, and you might find some of these stories that can become an idea for your next book. The classic one, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. There you will completely shift your thinking about fears and what does it mean to be creative. I really like also Tony Buzan, who is the inventor of mind maps, but he also really made cool research on how to learn effectively, and one of the things that are connected with effective learning is actually using your imagination and like unconventional thinking, because the weird things are the things that we remember the most because of their uniqueness. So for sure, worth checking out. In the nutshell, the YouTube channel, they create amazing videos. So I know that it's not about creative writing, but those scientific theories and the way how they present it, it's just amazing. I love it. Arts and Culture by Google. So there they share not only the culture where you can look at works in really cool quality, but sometimes they, like on their app, they have like those different experiments, and they have like so many of them that whenever I visit their website, there are just so many interesting things to explore. Forest app is useful for being productive. So how does it work? You just go to this app on your phone and you set the timer, for example, let's say half an hour. And for half an hour, it's counting when you are actually not using your phone, so you can just put it away. And if you're like using any other apps, it just doesn't count the time. And once this half an hour passed and you finish like your writing, or maybe you didn't finish but you were focused for the certain amount of time, then for each period of completed time, you have a real plant planted somewhere. So it means that you can like set up the timer for like 1 hour, and then those people who run this app, all the people who actually use it in order to be productive and focus, every time you get a real plant somewhere in the world planted. So it helps you and it helps the environment. And the last one is something that I feel really connected with and passionate about, because it's BFreak Porject that I am running. I started it 4 years ago, and it was created to empower creatives around the world. So it means that we and my friends, we sometimes organize exhibitions. You were able to count one of them. In case of Logan, he actually participated in one of them. Sometimes it also means that we are making creative research. So thanks to all that knowledge that I found so far, I was able to give you that talk, and sometimes I'm also giving lectures. Recently, I also started a podcast where I make interviews with different types of creatives. So if you have any cool friends that you think might be a really nice inspiration for the listeners, or maybe you want to share some of your stories, then just let me know. And basically the whole project is about empowering creatives. So if it means that sometimes you have a creative block and you just want to talk with someone, I'll be more than happy to get to know your practice, discuss some of your ideas, and just see if I can help you, or maybe just feel passionate about your thing together with you. That's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening, and if there are any questions, then I will be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Go on, Bashan.
When I write something, I often struggle to know whether it's good or not. I'll have days where I'm like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, and then the next day I'll think, what was I thinking? That was terrible. So I was wondering, when you create a piece of art, how do you yourself judge how good your work is? How do you look back on it like that?
This is easy. All of them are awful. So I just yes, I already know. No. So I think one of the things that is useful is time perspective. So when you feel like in the moment, oh, it's really good or it's really bad, you are under the influence of those emotions in that certain moment, and when you just wait and let it breathe for like a day or two, or maybe sometimes I come back to some of my works after a year, then you actually are able to see what it really means, what is the value of it, because you became like another person after that time. Even if it's a day, tomorrow you have like a fresh view, and then it's much easier to see what can be changed, what can be improved, or if it's already good enough. And sometimes it's good to actually not change anything, because if you created something in a certain moment, it was basically a documentation of who you were at the time. So I think, yeah, one thing is this time perspective, or another, asking your friends, but friends who have similar interests, like friends who actually have similar struggles and who actually put effort into doing what you are doing. Because if you ask someone who is in a completely different background and they just said, oh, it's useless for them. So it's good to ask for advice to friends that you feel really connected with. Those are my 2 pieces of advice.
That's good. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions?
I was going to say, if you're talking about the your like idea garden.
Yes.
When you have these ideas, you find these ideas, and it's an idea that you really love, but you just cannot write it in a way that you're happy with. How would you, in that situation, like what advice would you give to kind of reframe that? Like when you've written it 100 times and no matter how you write it, you're not happy with it.
Oh, it's okay. In that example, I'm trying to think right now about specific thing that I had in my mind. So I would say start anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Keep working on it, even if it means that in this process you feel tired of it. And you said, okay, what if you already tried like hundreds of times? Maybe it's time to actually just do it completely differently than you've tried it so far. Because if it's already like 12th time when you've tried it, or 30th, whatever, and you still hate it, then hey, maybe you're doing it in a way that is not the way that you really wanted to do.
Mm.
So first, like, analyze it. Hey, what are the reasons that I don't like it? And be very specific about it. And then when you start from the beginning, try to think, okay, how can I avoid it? How can I make it differently this time? And I think starting from the beginning is very important. Like sometimes when I'm working on some of my creativity courses, I think, okay, I have this one really good one. Let's think how I can expand it in order to create something new. But whenever I come back to it, I feel like, it's this content that I'm so frustrated about. So for me, it was much easier to create this presentation from nothing, starting with blank pages, rather than using some of the content that I already used in my previous presentations. So I think separating yourself from what was frustrating you.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
If there will be any more questions, then feel free to ask me, because I'm going to stick around until the end. But from me, that's everything. And yeah, all the best to you. Good luck with your creative practice. And take care of your beautiful gardens and your beautiful dreams. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Another round of applause.